happy you're here worshiping with us, like Abe said. But welcome to 2024. We have started 2024 off with a bang. I don't know if you guys have it, but in my 2024 bingo cards, it's already hit a couple times because we've already had Stanley Stampedes and Target. We have already had men tackling judges when they don't like the verdict they're given. And Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse, is now public domain. And there's already a horror movie prepared to be released, inspired by a killer Mickey Mouse. So 2024 is off with a bang. We're coming out swinging. But this is going to be a big year, 2024. It's a leap year. There's a solar eclipse. This year we have the Olympics. It is projected that the economic effects of COVID-19 this year are going to come to an end. And it's a big one here in America because it is election year. It's that year when the unfollow button gets really easy to press on your social media. But as a church, as a body of believers, we are poised to make a difference, make an impact in the lives of the people who are around us. If we're able to put aside our differences, if what really brings us together isn't the color of our skin or our political party or our social status, but the one person who can really bring us peace, the one person who can really bring us joy, and that's Christ. If we can look past all those differences and we can really show love, then we're positioned and we're poised to really make an impact in the people's lives around us. If we can avoid the drama and the whirlwind of Facebook and Twitter and just love, we can be a light. But in 2024, we will fail. Sorry, that was a Freudian slip, but it worked. In 2024, we will fail. We're going to mess up. We're going to say things that we don't want to say. We're going to have the wrong attitude. We're going to be too tired. We're going to be too busy. We're going to be too apathetic. We're going to prioritize our desires over Christ's. We will forget to pray. We will forget to read our Bible. Or maybe we just won't forget. Maybe we just won't do it. We're going to fail. But what will you do when you fail? What will be your response? We should expect to fail. But will you learn from it? Will you grow from it? And will you let God use it? Let's pray. Lord, I want to come to you and thank you that you are the God of Egypt. You're the God who set the Israelites free. You're the God who set us free from our sin. And Lord, as we really lean into embracing failure in our life, it's hard to accept because we hate failing. We hate not succeeding. So as we lean into this, really prepare our hearts for what your word says. Really let it impact, really let it sink in so that today could be the first day of the rest of our life. And we face our failures, learn from them, grow from them, and know that you will use them. So Lord, I love you. Thank you so much. This time is for you. It's in your name. Amen. How is everyone's New Year's resolutions going? Well, we are 7 days in. How are you successful this week? Have you been consistent with those goals? Are you exercising every day? Are you eating better? Are you reading more? Are you getting more sleep? Are you communicating better? No? Cool. Okay. Well, thank you. Are those goals? Are those resolutions staying strong? Did you stick to them most days? Did you fall off on Tuesday? Or did you just not actually ever start? Well, if you fell off on Tuesday or you didn't actually start, why was that? Were you afraid of failure? I mean, who loves to fail? Of course you don't. No one wakes up and is like, you know what? I really hope I let the people around me down today. No one wakes up and says, you know what? I really hope I unintentionally but really confidently call someone by the wrong name. You know, I really hope I forget that one thing my wife asked me to get at the store. No one wakes up saying those things why? Because we hate failure. We avoid failure. And sometimes our avoidance of failure will lead us to not even starting. We fear failure. So, people see me and they make assumptions. I can't tell you how many times a complete stranger has randomly approached me and said, "You used to play ball, right?" Well, it's fair. People will see me. I'm tall. I have long arms. I live in Indiana. Naturally, I play basketball, right? No, I don't. I don't at all. Well, or the other way, I'm a abnormally large, freakishly large man, and I live in Indiana, so of course I play football. No, I don't. And just because I don't do those things doesn't mean I didn't once try to do those things. You see, in middle school, I was out all the time, imagining that I was Reggie McMillan, practicing juking and fading away on my jump shot. And I was like, I'm good. I was confident. I have what it takes. And naturally, assuming I'm tall, so my unmerited confidence mixed with my height, I was pretty confident that I'd be every coach's dream. One thing I didn't realize is I only ever played by myself because I was the only kid on my street at that time. So I was only acting out these imaginary plays in my head. I was never actually putting my skills to the test. So was I really good? I may have looked the part because I had those Scottie Pippen Air shoes, and I wore those and one smack talking T-shirts with the color coordinated shorts. So I really looked the part. So basketball tryouts came, and I walked in swagger to the max. I was confident. I was just envisioning that I walked in and there's the angels sang in the coach's eyes and ears. And I was just seeing the coaches looking like that meme, but the guy standing behind the tree, rubbing his hands together, just really excited that this freakishly large 8th grader is walking in. He's going to be good at basketball. Well, then the actual tryout happened. And yeah. So they realized that I had the ups of a walrus, and I am as coordinated as a 1-year-old child learning to walk, and that when I'm dribbling the basketball, it's kind of like I'm dribbling a football. It flies every direction but my hand. And these coaches had this moment, their mouths dropped, but not out of impressive, that's amazement. They're out of shock, disappointment. Well, naturally, I didn't make the team. Surprise, surprise. Well, I stopped playing basketball. I stopped wearing those and one smack talk T-shirts too, but I stopped playing basketball. What happened? I lost my confidence. I started to doubt myself, and I gave up. How many of us live our life in that same rhythm? Or maybe we try something, we put effort into something, and we fail, and we give up. We lose our confidence, we doubt ourselves, we stop seeing the point in trying. We listen to that voice in our head, and we stop and we don't try again because we're going to fail. I'm not saying I had the potential of being the GOAT in basketball by any means. Not saying that whatsoever. But if I kept with it, if I would have learned from my mistakes, if I would have practiced, if I would have kept at it, I would have gotten better. What I didn't have was consistency or perseverance. I didn't stick with it. I didn't dust myself off. I didn't lick my wounds. I didn't get up and keep going. What are you consistent with? Are you consistent with anything? Or are you just consistently inconsistent? Do you have a new hobby every month? Because you start it and you're not really that good at it at first. You give it like a week or so and then you give up. You find something new. Have you ever decided you're going to be healthy? So you get a gym membership, you go to the gym, you go do cardio for 30 minutes. On the way home, you're hungry and you stop and get McDonald's. And then the next day, you're like, I got McDonald's last night. What am I doing? I'm just not going to go to the gym today. Why do we do that to ourselves? The thing is we also do that in our relationship with Christ. We say we're going to read the Bible more. We're going to pray more. But then our Bible app streak, our daily streak only gets to like 3. And then after we fail on that 4th day, we don't jump back into reading the Bible for like a week and a half because we're just ashamed. We're disappointed in ourselves that we fell off. Or maybe you're really committed. You're going to get involved in your church. I'm going to go every Sunday. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to join a small group. And then you've had a really busy week, and you stayed up late on Saturday doing like chores or hanging out with friends or whatever happens. And Sunday comes, and you're just not feeling it. You don't go. And then at like 1 o'clock, you look at the clock, and you're like, oh, church is over. I missed it. And weight sits in, guilt sets in, and then you're ashamed of yourself. And then you know what? I'm going to avoid going to small group this week. I'm probably going to talk myself out of going to church next Sunday because people are going to look at me differently because I missed last week. Why do we do that to ourselves? Well, plain and simple, we make it about ourselves. We lose sight of Jesus and his promises of grace and love, and we direct our sights onto ourselves. Look at Peter. If there isn't a better story in the Bible of a person who puts himself in that same rhythm, I don't know who is. Because this guy consistently put or made himself the center of everything. So remember, he's who Jesus invited to walk on the water. So he's walking on water. He's literally walking on water. And he knows that the one that he's walking towards is the one giving him the power to walk on water. But what does he do? He looks down at the waves. And he realizes, wait, I don't have the ability to walk on water. He loses sight of Jesus, and then he sinks. And then later on, Jesus is telling his disciples that one day he is going to go and die so that the gospel can be carried on. And Peter doesn't like that because he wants to sit on Jesus' council in the kingdom that he's going to rule in now. He doesn't like that Jesus is saying he's going to go die. So he says, no, Jesus, you can't die. You can't go. And then Jesus is like, get behind me, Satan. That's humbling. Like, not today, Satan. A few days later, Jesus is told or tells his disciples that tonight is the night. I am going to go and die. And then he asks Peter, his brother James, and his best friend John to go pray with him as he prepares to go and die. So they go into the garden, and Jesus goes off to pray by himself, and he comes back, and what is Peter doing? He's sleeping. And there's this moment where Jesus is like, he calls, so obviously Peter goes by Peter, but his like given government name is Simon. So can you imagine Jesus calls you out of your nickname and calls you by your government name? How humbling that would be. He's like, Simon, why are you sleeping? And Peter's like, well, I was just really tired, so I slept. Well, then Jesus goes and comes back, and goes and comes back, and every time they're asleep. And finally, Jesus is like, whatever, the time has come. I am off to die. Hope you enjoyed your sleep. Moments later, Jesus has let Peter know many times that he is going to go and die. He's going to be arrested. He is going to die so that the gospel can be carried on. And what does Peter do? He cuts off a soldier's ear. I can just imagine Jesus like, dude, really? Like, we just talked about it. Bending down, grabbing the ear, and putting it on is being like, I'm sorry, man, he gets like this sometimes. Like, every one of those occasions, Peter took his eyes off of Christ and put them on what he wanted Jesus to be, what he wanted out of Jesus' ministry. Most famously, while Christ is being tortured and killed, and after he dies, Peter is asked 3 times, are you one of his disciples? And he says, no, I'm not, because he is afraid that he will bring himself danger. Again, he puts himself in the center. And just like Peter, we make it all about ourselves. We measure our successes against our personal expectations for our life, instead of the promised grace and love that Christ has for us. We get discouraged because we think we should be better. We get discouraged and we forget that we are broken, sinful people who can't do any of this on our own. God knows that. He knows that we need him, and he's waiting for us to remember that we need him whenever we lose sight of him because of failure. It's like the prodigal son. The son made a mistake. He went and he failed in stewarding his inheritance, and then he gave up on life. The father was waiting for him. And when the father saw him walking down the road, he didn't just stand there with his arms crossed. He didn't force the son to feel the weight of his failure. No, he opened his arms, he ran to him, and he embraced him back into the family. We fail. We mess up, and we believe the lies that the enemy is telling us. And we expect that Christ will treat us the same way we would treat ourselves, with zero grace. Obviously, we know God has unlimited grace. But that's not enough. Is that enough? Is knowing that God has unlimited grace enough? If it's not, I have some brain science for you. So, everything you think, every action you take, it produces a neurochemical change in your brain. And your brain uses these chains of neurons to control what you think and what you do. Well, when we repeatedly send those same chains, have those same thoughts, have those same actions, it can create a path that these neurons take to send these messages for these thoughts, for these actions through our brain. And those are called a neuropathway. So it's kind of like a beaten path when you go on a hike. It's not the main trail that you go on, but so many people have walked down this path that has created a trail. It's like when a dog runs the same pattern in your backyard and kills the grass in that shape. It creates a path. In like a month or so, when we're driving in the snow, and it hasn't been plowed yet, and the snow is hard enough and deep enough, and those tracks from the car in front of you are predominant enough, we could almost let go of the wheel and the tracks would take us. Because that path has been forged. And these neural pathways are your brain sending the same message back and forth, creating this neuro pathway in your brain. Well, in addition to your neural pathway, there's what is called the reticular activating system, the RAS. And the RAS is like a mailroom in your brain. It is collecting data, organizing it, and sending it to where it needs to go. It clumps it together with like things that it thinks are similar, things that it thinks are pertinent to each other. It's what we use to be aware of danger, to look for pleasure. It helps us sift through the data that our brain is processing, identify what's important, and disregard what it thinks is not. But the RAS also creates beliefs. Beliefs off of repeat experiences. So that's why we tend to get what we expect. This is why if you view yourself as a victim, you view yourself as never going to get ahead. You think you're never going to have healthy relationships. You think that repeatedly, you're probably not going to. Because your RAS is cementing these neuro pathways in your brain, making it really easy for you to have that same thought, make that same action, live out the same life that you do repeatedly. You get in this rut. And in addition to that, the RAS will cement the pathways because it filters out the information that conflicts with this pathway and filters in the information that supports it. So it's kind of like your Facebook algorithm. It only shows you what you think or what it thinks you want to see. So, meaning if we repeatedly think we're going to fail, if we repeatedly fear failure, our brain is going to begin to work against us. When someone doubts you, when you doubt yourself, you're going to listen. You're going to store it away. You're going to just continue to pack down that path in your brain. And when someone says, you can do it, you got this, you can get through, it's going to fall off. You're not going to pay attention to it. When God says, I love you, accept my grace, come back to me, I want to be with you, come back to me the way you are, you'll brush it off. You won't let that sink in. That's why it's so hard to start something new. That's why it's so hard to stick to your New Year's resolutions. We want to start. We want to get healthy. We want to start. We want to read the Bible more. We want to pray more. But it's hard to stick with it because the neural pathways and the RAS are trying to direct us back to what we're used to. We're listening to the enemy. So there's not only a spiritual barrier with the enemy telling you lies, but your own brain is wired to bring you back to the status quo. When we face struggles, when we face failures, instead of persevering, instead of pushing through the failures and being consistent in our pursuit of Christ, we bow out and we give up. It says in 2 Corinthians 4:16 and 18, therefore we do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, If you look closer, it says, even though we are messing up, even though we are failing, even though we are losing sight of Christ and we're focused on the fact that we aren't good at something, even though we think that we should be good at something and we're not, we aren't making progress as fast as we think we should be. So even though our outer person is being destroyed, our inner person is being renewed day by day. That consistency and that perseverance is refining your heart towards Christ and making you stronger. It's also forming new neural pathways. So, continuing in 17, for our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. In 18, so we do not focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. If we focus on our failures, if we focus on our struggles, if we focus on what we do wrong, our lives will be temporary. Our effect on this world will be temporary. Our legacies will be temporary. But if we push through, if we fight, if we persevere, if we celebrate our failures, because that's how we learn, then our legacy, our life, the glory of God through what happens in our experiences is eternal. And you're like, okay, Joel, how do I not give up? How do I not bow out? How do I beat this when I'm so used to listening to the lies that the enemy is telling me? When I'm so used to listening to the lies that I tell myself? When my brain is literally chemically wired to work against me? How do I beat that? Well, in the wise words of Barbie, the only real failure is not starting. And yes, that Barbie. I was actually watching, or I wasn't watching. Don't take that out of context. My daughter was watching this Barbie TV show last night, literally last night, and I hear this line: "The only real failure is not starting." And I'm like, wow, Barbie is wise. But seriously, how do we beat us listening to lies from the enemy, from ourselves, and our brain wiring us to do the opposite of what we know we are supposed to do? Well, spiritually, we look to Christ. You discipline yourself. You listen to his promises. You push into his word. You pray and you praise him for everything he has done for you. And that will lead to how we combat it practically. Because that repeated listening to his promises, that repeated reading his scriptures, that repeated spending time in prayer, that repeated praising him will create new neural pathways in your brain. Making it chemically easier and easier and easier to draw closer and closer to Christ. If you want something specific to do, think about what you're struggling with. Is it anger? Is it greed? Is it the need for success? Is it laziness? Is it lust? Is it porn? Is it fear? And whatever it is, Google search passages on that topic. Write them down, put them on a note card, put them in your notes on your phone, read them in a voice memo on your phone, and consume them repeatedly. In addition to the mindless content that you consume every day. Or better yet, Replace the mindless content that you consume every day with that. Create new neuro pathways. The more and more we consume, the more and more we find to consume more and more of. The new pathways will form and we will draw closer and closer to Christ. You are going to fail. You are going to mess up. You need to expect it, but you can't accept it. You can't listen to the lies of the enemy and that perceived narrative that your brain is telling you. God has a plan for you. You have to listen to it and follow it. You will fail, but will you fail up? There's a saying that's you're either winning or you're learning. Abraham Lincoln failed repeatedly. Failed businessman, failed lawyer, failed in his personal life. Then he learned from his mistakes. He became president, and now every American is free. Michael Jordan failed. He was cut from teams. He didn't start, he didn't play, and then he learned from his mistakes. He didn't sit in that failure. He didn't give up, and then he became the GOAT. Don't at me. It's not LeBron, it's not Kobe, it's Michael. I have failed. You see, in 2011, I preached my third sermon I've ever preached. And afterwards, I listened to the lies of my insecurities and a couple from naysayers. You see, I was told that my stutter was a distraction, and because of it, the person who told me said they got nothing out of my sermon. It was a waste of time. That my impediment ruined the message. So I stopped preaching for 11 years. Because I listened to the lies of the enemy. I stopped looking to God and what He had for me. I focused on my insecurities. I made it about myself. And I told God that He couldn't use me. But God had a plan. And honestly, I wouldn't be doing any other job other than being your pastor. I know that this is the path God had for me. Now, this past year and a half has been really trying, really stressful, really challenging, but I wouldn't walk away for anything because I know that I'm on God's path. Peter failed, and he failed, and he failed. Because he made it all about himself. And then Christ reminded him, and he showed him that he was making it about himself and that he had more of a plan than what Peter was allowing. And then Peter went on and started the church. What we are doing right now is because Peter fought through those failures and paved the foundation for what we're doing. What is Jesus showing you about yourself this morning? How are you going to respond? Are you going to give up, hide, only focus on your failures? Are you going to focus your eyes on Christ and live the life that God has planned for you? Please close your eyes as the band comes up and the prayer team comes up. If this is all new to you, and you've never felt the peace of God's love and the grace that He gives, I want to tell you a story. 2,000 years ago, God sent his son Jesus. And he lived this perfect life in order to die and raise again to pay the debt of our sin, allowing us to connect to God. And if you've never heard the gospel, if you've never felt the stirring in your heart, and you've never responded in faith and come alive in Christ, I would love to speak with you after service. I would love to help you understand how you could walk away with the hope of Christ. The people standing in front would love to as well. Now, if you're a follower of Christ, you could be sitting here thinking, I'm going to fail. I'm going to mess up. I'm not even going to start. Maybe you're sitting here saying, I want to get better. I'm going to get better. I'm going to take this life seriously. I'm going to give it to Christ. But subconsciously, you've already proactively decided you're going to fail. The beauty of it is you're right. You will. That's fine. It's fine if you fail and you learn from it and you grow from it and you use it to catapult yourself into the plan that God has for you. Stop listening to the lies that you can't and forge new neural pathways. Be consistent, persevere, and never look back. So fail. Fail moving forward. Fail pushing ahead. Fail up. Lord, I want to thank you for being a gracious God. A God that embraces our failures, uses them as a tool to help us learn, to help us grow, to help us become who you want us to be. We run from failures. We hide, we fear, we combat them. We make plans so they don't happen. We create rhythms in our lives and patterns and habits to avoid them. But really, we need to stop and listen to you. We need to stop and look for what you have for us. Embrace those failures. Grow the way you want us to grow. And live the life you want us to live. God, we love you. And it's in your name.
You bye.